Hello and welcome to Unit 4 and a new learning target, 4.1, called Body Systems. Before we get into that, I want to reflect a little bit on the last unit that you finished. And that last unit was all about the cellular level, more or less. We were focusing on organelles and enzymes and the different things inside of a cell. And now we're going to start looking at more complex organisms, or things called multicellular organisms. But I think it's important to take a step back here and look at the similarities and differences between these two types of organisms. A unicellular organism is meaning it's a cell or an organism that's made of one cell. Whereas a multicellular organism, like the frog that you see in this picture, is comprised of many cells. Now, unicellular organisms function using organelles, like the mitochondria, the nucleus, and ribosomes, whereas a multicellular organism like you and me, we have organs, and our organ systems work together. One similarity, though, that both unicellular and multicellular organisms have together is that they must carry out their life functions. Now, when we talk about carrying out our life functions, we're talking about essentially our metabolism. This is a word that you'll see a lot oftentimes in Regents questions. Metabolism is a complex process, like the poster indicates over here, but really all you need to know about metabolism, when you see that word, it has anything to do with growing or excreting or your nutrition or the release, storage, and use of energy. So when you see the word metabolism, think the way that your body is using energy. So now we're getting into a couple different body systems or organ systems that you find inside of multicellular organisms. And the first one we're going to start off with is the digestive system. Now, the digestive system is important because it's the one that's responsible for the ingestion or the intake of your food, the digestion of the nutrients in that food, or the breaking down of that food, which takes place in the stomach and the small intestines, whereas the small intestines also help the absorption of those nutrients. And one thing that often comes up on the Regents exam that is really important that you know what it looks like now, because we're going to see this in the rest of this unit, is something called the pancreas. Now, the pancreas is peripherally involved with the function of the digestive system, and it's right here. It's this organ that you see here. It kind of looks like a leaf. And the pancreas is really important because it's the organ that releases a hormone. So it's actually in some ways part of a different system called the endocrine system, which we'll talk about later on. But that pancreas, it lowers blood sugar levels. So when you eat food, when your digestive system eats food, you absorb sugars, and your blood sugar levels spike. And when your blood sugar levels get too high, that can cause problems. But thankfully, we have the pancreas, which looks like this, and releases a hormone called insulin to lower those blood sugar levels and have it absorbed in our liver. Also, one thing you need to know about the digestive system is that digestion and ingestion also happen inside of cells. So this is a unicellular cell organism, called an amoeba, and you see this amoeba ingesting a bacterial cell. So not only do we multicellular organisms do digestion, but also unicellular organisms do digestion, as you see in this image here. Another body system moving on now is called the respiratory system. The respiratory system contains all of these different organs, or these parts, the main one being the lungs. And inside of the lungs are these branches, or your bronchi, and at the end, or the tips of those bronchi, are these little air sacs called alveoli. Yeah, say that word with me. Alveoli. Fun one, right? Alveoli are like little grapes, bunches of grapes. They're air sacs that is where the exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen take place between the internal environment of your body and the external surrounding environment outside of you. And what's happening here is the oxygen comes in as you breathe in, and the carbon dioxide that's in your body leaves as you exhale. Also, water is exhaled. If you breathe on your hand, or if I was to breathe on this lens of my computer that's filming me right now, it would fog up, and that's evidence of water vapor actually being in your body that's being eliminated by your lungs. And the way that these processes take place is by the process of diffusion. Diffusion allows oxygen to come into our body and carbon dioxide out of our body. The respiratory system also is oftentimes compared to the cell membrane. If you're comparing a multicellular organism and a unicellular organism, it's the cell membrane that's responsible for the exchange of gases like carbon dioxide and oxygen that lets things in and out, just like the lungs inside of our respiratory system. Another body system that you need to be familiar with is called the excretory system. You may see the word excretory here. It sounds like an exit. When you excrete something, you're getting rid of it, and that makes sense. We want to get rid of our waste, and that's exactly what the excretory system does. The main organ of the excretory system, this organ system, is the kidney, which you see sliced in half here. It looks just like a kidney bean. The kidney's purpose is to filter your blood. So any waste that is being carried by your blood that you don't need gets removed. And also your kidneys are responsible for removing any excess water that's in your body and passing it to your bladder, or then can be eliminated from your body when you urinate, along with any additional waste that was filtered out through the blood. Now sometimes we saw that the respiratory system can be compared to the cell membrane. Well, the same thing is true of the excretory system. The excretory system also is sometimes compared to the cell membrane, and that's because the cell membrane is the part of the cell, or the organelle, that gets rid of waste, whereas the excretory system in our body and the kidney are the things that get rid of waste. The next body system now is the circulatory system. The circulatory system is like a big highway of roads and avenues and back alleys. It transports things. It transports nutrients and oxygen around the body, and at the same time it transports waste and carbon dioxide on its way out of the body. And this is all done by your red blood cells, and also inside of your circulatory system are other blood cells that we'll learn about later on in this unit. Now the circulatory system is sometimes compared to a unicellular cell's organelle called the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm are these little dots, this jelly-like substance. And what you can see is once a bacterial cell is ingested and then begins digestion process, it gets transported. It gets moved around. And that's the same thing that's happening in the circulatory system. When we ingest our food, it gets digested and then absorbed into our blood. It gets transported. All those nutrients get transported around. So the same processes are happening in a unicellular and a multicellular organism. Next one, the nervous system. The nervous system is a messenger system, and it sends electrical messages. So let's say that we want to move parts of our body. Well, our brain would send a message throughout our nervous system. This is what one of your nerves looks like. And if you zoom in on that nerve, you see the nerves, those signals get sent by these messengers, these chemical messages. Go from one nerve maybe to your muscle, or from one nerve to another nerve. And this is what the nerve system does. Transports messages. Now, nervous systems also contain these things called cell receptors. You see here, this is the end of one nerve and the beginning of another nerve. Now, there's actually a gap in between nerves. They don't actually physically touch. So what actually happens is your nerve has to send these chemical signals from one nerve to the other in order to transmit the message. Now, this only happens if the chemical that is released by the nerve is the right size and shape as the cell receptor molecule on the other nerve or muscle that it may be transmitting to. Now, this is similar to enzymes. Enzymes only function with a particular substrate. They have the right size and shape. The same is true of your nervous system. The chemical signals, the electrical chemical signals that are being sent in by the nervous system will only be passed on to the next nerve if that next nerve contains the correct cell receptor molecule. The next body system here is your endocrine system. Your endocrine system contains all of these different glands, and those glands release hormones. Hormones are chemical messengers. Nervous system relies on electrochemical messengers. Hormones are just straight up chemical messages, and they get transported through your circulatory system. Examples of hormones that you've probably heard about before are insulin. Previously in this lecture, you saw that insulin lowers your blood sugar levels. Testosterone are found in the testes of a male. Testosterone is responsible for the development of sperm and other secondary sex characteristics that you find, like the deepening of a male's voice or the growth of hair, like facial hair or pubic hair. Estrogen is the female counterpart in some ways to testosterone, but also has important reproductive cycle functions in a female. Adrenaline is a hormone you may think about. It gets excreted on top of these kidneys here by the adrenal gland. The adrenal gland is that stuff that gets you really hyped up when you get in a tense situation, a fight or flight syndrome, where someone confronts you in a dark alley and you're really scared and they jump out and they frighten you. Your adrenaline really gets going and you can either punch them in the face maybe or run away, and that's thanks to adrenaline. Anyways, your endocrine system also works with the cell receptors. Now we saw the nervous system uses cell receptors to send the chemical messages, the electrical chemical messages. Now your endocrine system also depends on cell receptors for the transmission of their message. Now the endocrine gland, something like the testes or the adrenal gland, will excrete or secrete a hormone, and that hormone will travel through your body by the circulatory system, transported in your blood, and it will go to a particular cell, and if that cell has the right receptor molecule, it will bond with it and will cause a change or a desired change to take place. Now that only happens if the target cell is the right size and shape, if that receptor molecule is the right size and shape, that is. You can see that this plus-shaped hormone will only work on this particular target cell C because it has the right receptor molecule. It does not work with the non-target cell, or cell A over here, because it's more of a curved shape, and they will not match. So you see two things here, the nervous system and the endocrine system, depending upon cell receptor molecules, like enzymes, in order for the messages to be transmitted. Very important point that you need to know about cell receptors. Now also you need to know that your body systems, they work together. They don't operate in isolation. They work in tandem. Here's a couple of common examples that you should be familiar with. Your digestive system and your circulatory system work together. The digestive system ingests your food, digests that food into nutrients, and those nutrients are then absorbed into your bloodstream through the small intestine and then transported by your circulatory system. So the digestive and circulatory system work together. Also, your respiratory and circulatory system work together. Your respiratory system, as you breathe in, brings oxygen into your lungs and the alveoli, which are wrapped by blood vessels. The oxygen diffuses into your blood and then gets transported around your body to help supply your muscle cells or your other body cells with oxygen. And at the same time, your blood cells pick up waste product of carbon dioxide, a waste product of cellular respiration, by the way, brings it back to the lungs, and when you breathe out, that carbon dioxide gets removed back out into the outside environment. So there's another set of two body systems that work together that you should be familiar with, the respiratory and the circulatory. And then finally, here's one that's really complex that shows multiple organ systems working together, or body systems working together, and it's the skeletal, muscular, nervous, and circulatory. So let's say, for instance, that, well, I want to move my right hand over here. I want to put my left arm up. I want to do something like this. I want to do a crazy dance move, right? Well, that is all happening because our nervous system, our brain, is sending a message to our muscle cells to move our skeleton. So nervous system says, hey, move your right arm. You move your right arm. Thanks to your muscles contracting, your skeleton also is your bones, obviously, they get moved around. Now, while this is happening, your circulatory system, you need energy and oxygen to do this. Your circulatory system transports those things to your muscles to allow you to have enough energy for that to happen. I guess you could also say the same thing is true of the circulatory system transporting these things to your nervous system. In order for it to operate, it needs oxygen as well. So the point here is that these different body systems work together. There's a lot of similarities between unicellular organisms and multicellular organisms. The point here is that they all work together. They all work together in order for these things, for you to live, have these life processes for metabolism to occur, and that is learning target for